Hi, welcome to Give No Fox. I'm Allie Ruby. I'm an inner voice facilitator and RTT practitioner.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Bradley, and I'm a functional medicine coach who, always seems to dabble in the spiritual stuff.
Hi, I'm Stephanie. I am a former licensed marriage and family therapist and a coach.
And I am Danielle, and I am an evidential medium and intuitive guide.
Yay. All right. So today we're going to talk about intuition, which is a massive topic and subject. So I'm really curious to hear what everybody else's take and feeling on intuition altogether, but specifically what intuition is. So with the work that I do as an inner voice facilitator, for me, I always view intuition as basically just another word for my inner voice. So it's my intuition or my soul or the lady in my basement or my inner voice. And so for me, it's like my deepest, truest self. But I know that that's really up for interpretation, and that may not be how everybody else sees and feels it. So I'm really curious to hear what you guys, what your definition for intuition is and how it shows up for you and all that stuff.
Okay, I think Danielle's going to have the biggest, longest explanation of this. So I want to go before her. So I'm not going to follow her. So it's funny that you say that, because what I always think of intuition as is being like your spirit guides whispering to you. I actually think of it as being somehow outside of me, and maybe this thing that you're connected to, but that it's there to help guide you and help you, in your life and follow along. But I don't know, I've always thought of it as being outside. So it's interesting to consider no, that's your highest self speaking to you, right?
Love this. Yes.
I'm kind of the same, although I've never really thought much about spirit guides until just recently when I've met all of you guys in Clubhouse and everything. But I think of it as, to me, my intuition is something that I feel in my body. I think it's like an impulse or like a drive towards or away from something. So it's like a expansion or contraction. But I do see it, the more I get in touch with it, the more I feel that it is like kind of a communication from something higher than me. Not necessarily, I don't know if it's spirit guide or what. I think of it more as like the universe, or like life is like guiding me in a specific direction and giving me answers about whether something is, something to go towards or go away from. That's kind of how I feel it.
I kind of think it's something, for me, I think it kind of wraps up everything each of you kind of said. I think intuition, it's us, our higher selves, right? But I think our guides and God and whoever, however you want to call source, whatever, they also guide us and give us those little intuition pings of things that we need to pay attention to. So I think it's both inside of us and outside of us. It kind of comes from all directions in a way, if you think about it. But I think the more connected we are, like Cheryl said, to our higher selves, to that soul being, the easier it is for us to recognize that voice and that push, those. So I always refer to intuition as like an invisible string, like going straight to your gut. Like sometimes you can literally just feel it pulling at you from your right underneath your rib cage almost. And for me, anyways. And that I think is really when it's really tied to us in our soul. And then there's these times where it's just this overall blanketed feeling of just need or knowing or fear or whatever that. And I think sometimes when it comes, again, for me, when it feels like almost like that blanketed thing, that's, I think, our guides or our angels or whoever you want to call them, those are the ones that are that time kind of giving us a huge clue. And so I think it kind of is this all encompassing.
What do you mean by a blanketed feeling?
So for me, sometimes I'll say when it's myself, I'll feel almost like it from my gut. Like if I make a decision or And I literally have made decisions that way, where I will lay down in a quiet place and I will like almost pretend like I have two choices in each hand. And I will say, okay, I'm going to do this in this hand and this, and I will put each hand to like right underneath my rib cage, and whichever one makes me feel good, I know and that seems like a weird practice, but it's what works for best for me. And then I know that that's me and my intuition, me and my soul working, like my higher self and my human body working hand in hand. And then there's these times where you just get these senses of like, you just know. Like, have you ever just had those things where you just know you're not supposed to walk into this party, or you're not supposed to get into this car, or you're not supposed to, or, you know, you meet somebody and it's like a full body tingle where you're like, I don't like you, I don't want to talk to you, something's not right. I think that is an outer intuition feeling, right? It's their energy mixed with what your guides are telling you to kind of be like, pay attention, look around, know what's happening. So I call that like the blanketed, the one that comes from more outside, whether it's the energy from somebody else, or if it's just like, I can just be like walking down the street and all of a sudden I'm like, turn around, something's not right, I don't want to go here anymore. That is what I would consider like it, because it kind of, for me anyways, feels like almost like this full body, like full stop, or like warning bells. And so then that's how I would kind of differentiate between me, what I'm trying to make the best decisions to keep myself on my journey, and like universe warning me that something's upcoming.
It goes both ways though, because I feel like I'm so much more in touch. I've just been talking about this recently. I'm so much more in touch with my intuition when it's telling me to go towards something. I'm like very comfortable with that. I'm like, yeah, I know what this feels like. I'm going for it. Like, I'm going to meet this person, or, you know, make this choice or whatever when it feels good. But when something doesn't feel good, then I start questioning myself and I'm not quite sure what it is. And I like start using logic and trying to figure out what's going on or something. So it's interesting that you gave like a lot of those examples of the negative intuition, but I don't know if everybody feels that, but in myself, it feels so much easier to follow like the towards intuition. I question that, like, oh, don't go in there. I'm like, well, what's my problem? Like, am I being judgmental, or like,
what if I do go in there?
but if it's like, go in there, I'm like, okay, fine, I'll go in.
So there you go, going in there.
So you guys think then that the like the clairvoyance, clairaudience, claircognizance, is that also intuition that just manifests in its own different ways and kind of through different platforms?
I think people think when they think of the clairs that it's just left for psychic people, right? Which is true. When you're using your psychic abilities, when you're another, you're using all of the clairs, or you sometimes use more of them than others, like myself. But those are all given to all of us. We all have the ability to tap into them. How we use them and how we're supposed to use them varies between each and every person. But and I say that as in like a public sense, right? Like how you're supposed to use your abilities towards others varies, but like we're given those just in the same way that we're given our sense of taste or pain or smell. We're given those things so we can navigate. We just learn from a very young age to kind of shut them off and not use them. And to go with what you were saying, Stephanie, it's not just you, it's so many people that do that, because we are taught, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about our previous podcast, is we're taught from a very young age that anything that we're told, like if we're going against the grain, right? Like if everybody's walking into this party and you're like, no, I don't want to go into this party. Or if everybody loves so-and-so and you're like, no, I don't want to be friends with so-and-so. And they're like, well, that's just dumb. You need to be friends with them because everybody loves them. Then it's almost like this brainwashing that we have from such an age that we, instead of trusting ourselves, we second guess ourselves. And then we 9 times out of 10 get burned to a crisp when you know, when the damage is done, you're like, I freaking said it. And then it's too late, the damage is done. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
I love the use of, and maybe I've heard it and I just wasn't listening, but you guys referencing the clairs. I just imagine like 4 little tiny avatars of a cute little clair being like, I hear it, I taste it, I see it.
Okay, we like need to make those little things. And then when we're talking about them, we need to have whatever Claire we're talking about, like dance across our screen.
This is the scene, Claire. But I feel like the more that I connect, and I guess it's just an assumption that I feel like this is the case in general, but the more that I connect to my own like inner space, my inner voice, my whatever, that I have that opening and that, open line of communication and that trust with my own, deepest or highest self or whatever, that the more aware I am, even if it's just the more willing to recognize I am, those outside blanket feelings, it can be even a subtle thing. It doesn't have to be, because I've had them my whole life where it's like my intuition is ringing a massive bell, saying like, holy shit, no, 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 as loud as it can for like those emergency intervention moments. And the more connected I am, the more subtle it can be from those external places, that it's like, oh yeah, it's not like the shit's fully hitting the fan, but I'm not into it. I don't dig it. And I feel like the more connected I am, the more active my own little Claires are, the more I'm aware of those, abilities that are already within us all, that we do have access to, but maybe not a conscious access to. Like we haven't discovered it, or we haven't opened that part, even though it's in us.
Yeah, I think the more you meditate and ground yourself, I mean, we should talk about it. Like, what are the ways that you increase your intuition, right? For me, I definitely noticed I went through this like interesting space where I had never meditated and was like, how the fuck do you meditate? Like, you sit there and you're just like miserable, like thinking about stuff. And you're like, okay, I think I'm bad at this. So just like failing like all day long. So I did two things. I listened to the Headspace app that was free. I did the first 10 free days, and he starts you out at like maybe 30 seconds. Like
which feels like an eternity.
Good to you. And he has this lovely, English accent. And then I went to a Buddhist monastery every week for 12 weeks and, sat in meditation for an hour. And then we had a class for an hour after that. But yeah, that was hard. But both were helpful. But what I really noticed was my intuition was like skyrocketing when I was doing that. And I would just know stuff about people or about things that had happened, or, someone had hacked into my phone or read my journal, or, like I knew these things. And it was interesting because it was like, to your point, Allie, like you didn't have to get smacked over the head with it anymore. It was more subtle, but it was just like bang on. I know this is true. Like there was no doubt,
Yeah. Yes.
So does anyone else, is it just me? I'm actually really curious if I know this is just me, but when you mix being highly intuitive, which we all four are, with being empaths, which again, we all four are, it kind of makes this explosion of I don't even know what it is, but am I the only one that I would become obsessive sometimes when I would know something, and it would almost be like I had to prove it to everyone else. I had to find a way, and I would become obsessive with, like I was like a little mole, like just digging. It's like, and I'm like, and then it's like, what's the point? Like at the end of the day, I had to really learn that like I don't have to prove myself to everyone else. I don't have to prove why I don't want to do something or I do want to do something. But for a very long time, I felt kind of crazy when I just would know something or I just would feel something, and I couldn't have like you're kind of expected to have a reason, right? Everybody's kind of like, well, if you don't want to do this, why don't you want to do it? Or if you don't like this, why don't you like it? And that, especially if I felt like people were lying to me, I would become like, I don't even have social media, and I once hacked into my dad's social media to prove something. That's how crazy I would get. And so I wonder if that's something that everyone struggles with, or if I'm just extra super crazy, and if I am, that's okay too.
I don't think you're extra super crazy, but I think I was just too busy stuffing it all down for most of my life. And then by the time I got to the point, which was really within the past year or two, that I was really able to acknowledge. And I mean, honestly, even in the past like 8 or 9 months is when I've become like so comfortable with trusting what I'm feeling and following it, that maybe when it was still kind of new, I was just so busy squashing it and not paying attention to it and talking myself out of it that I didn't do that.
Like you jumped that session.
Yeah.
Danielle, I'm with you where it's funny you say about the deception piece, because the times where I have really felt like that was the times when I felt like someone was being deceptive with me, or even deceptive with themselves, actually. You know, I had a friend, I won't go into all the details, but like I knew that he was lying to me, but he was also lying to himself. And it just bothered me so much. And so, you know, I've had lots of experiences like that since then. And I think that that tricky part of that discernment is understanding that just because I know something is bothering you, or that you're not being truthful about who and how you are, doesn't mean that you have to explain it to me. Like they don't owe you that veracity, right? So you kind of have to like get over your own ego of being like, I'm right and I know I'm right, and just know that you're right and let them be, right? Like they're not ready to move along in whatever direction you're thinking they need to. It's not your life, it's their life. They get to do whatever the hell they want.
That's, I think, when intuition and being an empath get together and have like a little crazy baby, right? Because when the empath parts of us want to fix things, it's our inner nature. And it's why until we learn to control it, and again, that will be like a whole other conversation one day, I'm sure. Because until we learn to control it, we just will give and give and give until we have nothing left, because we feel like it's our duty to do so. And it's not, but it is. We want to fix everything. So when we're like, not only are you lying, but you're just fucking up your whole life in the meantime. So let me tell you how to fix it.
Yeah.
And then you become like this know-it-all that nobody likes. And I've been there as well. So
I think we should talk about what being empathic is, as opposed to being intuitive. I mean, so everybody is empathic to some degree and everybody's intuitive to some degree, right? I feel like I want to say that just because when we say like, I'm an empath or certain people are empaths, we all are. Doesn't mean that there's people who are just completely not and don't have any of that. But, what's the difference between empath and intuitive? Empathic is more
disagree with that statement. I think there are some people who aren't empathic at all, but
there is. Well, those where you get your sociopaths and your crazy narcissists.
Yeah.
Nobody wants, we don't want to offend them. We're going to get like a shit ton of emails from narcissists now.
Okay, so cluster B personalities aside.
Okay. Outliers.
So I would argue that inside of there, that they still are, you know what I mean? Like that's a whole different fucking massive nut to bust open, basically, of like, where does sociopathy and narcissism begin? And is it at a soul level? Because at our soul level, it's, I believe, like empath city. It's just a matter of our awareness. That is a slippery fucking slope.
I don't know if we're qualified to answer those questions.
It's really hard to remember that like you're saying, at a soul level, it's not that these people are here and they're doing this either for others' benefits or for their own in some reason. There's a lesson to be learned there. There's something that they have to go through. And I mean, if you take these really horrible narcissists that, and you kind of peel back until you find their trigger point, or most of them have been through some really awful things. There's something in their childhood or young adulthood that just instantly changed them forever. And so it is, it makes it a lot less, it makes it easier to love them from afar, put it out there, knowing that, instead of being just hateful or angry all the time when you come into contact with them. But also they make it very hard to constantly remember that. It's like a war in your head sometimes, where you have to remember like, man, I gotta love them even though they make this almost impossible for me. But I also just need to step away. Like, I'm gonna love you from like way over here.
Loving doesn't need to mean we text today or any day or ever. Like I can love you from 10 trillion miles away
Yeah.
and zero contact.
Yeah. We'll meet up some other day
Yeah.
in some other life when you're not like this.
They can be your greatest teacher, you know? So like the value can be extraordinary, but once you learn the lesson, it's like, okay, I'm out.
You, I'm done. Yeah.
Okay, so back to what is an empath?
Yes. So who wants to tackle that one?
Okay, so I'll tell you my understanding. We didn't really identify the Claires, right? So,
We can do that first.
well, but my understanding, you tell me if I'm not right, I could be wrong. I think that clairsentience, that's where you feel in your body, right? Being an empath means you have clairsentience. You feel feelings in your body that belong to other people.
Yes.
So it's interesting that you said that, Cheryl, because I was reading a book called Guided by Hans Christian King, I think. I haven't read the whole book, but I was like flipping through it, and he says that clairsentience is intuition.
Which
So
in a way kind of is, right? Because we feel. So in both ways. So clairsentience, we with our intuitions when we feel things. But in the same way though, intuitions come to other people in other ways. Like if you have psychic abilities or you are really good at using like clairvoyance or claircognizance, then all of a sudden like a picture can just show up in your mind and you can almost see what's going to happen before it happens. So I do think intuition will come to you in different ways, but a lot of the times intuition can be described as clairsentient because you feel it. It's literally like your heart will start racing, or you start sweating. Something happens physically to give you to bring your attention to a not so physical thing.
yeah.
Well, and this is even different than that though. I'm thinking about like when you're around someone and you can like feel their feelings, right? Like I'll have clients who we're on a Zoom call and they're trying not to cry and then I am literally just sobbing, right? Or I go to church. I hate going to church because every time I go to church, I feel everybody's stuff and then I'm just crying the whole time. I hate it.
It's really hard. So I think I would explain it in like really simple Danielle terms. I think being an empath is like having your clairsentient like turned all the way up, like on superpower. Like it has a Red Bull and some vodka and it is like ready to go all night long. I feel like that's kind of where I would say being an empath is. It's an overabundance of being able to feel, because not only are you feeling your intuition, which is what, like when you feel for you, but like when someone is like, very much like Cheryl said, like someone is hurting or someone is like, I can't watch TV without crying every single time. I cry at commercials, I cry at TV shows, cheesy ass. Like my kids were watching the original Full House. I don't know why, they're weird. They're watching the old school Full House and I'm sitting there like crying every time the cheesy music comes on, and it's the cheesiest things ever. It's like DJ didn't eat for 2 days and I'm like just because that stupid music comes on, you know what I mean?
DJ didn't eat for 2 days.
That's the episode they just watched. Makes me want to cry just thinking about it. That's when you're being an empath. Like when I'm sure Allie, you can, people think I'm crazy because I talk to animals like nonstop. And I'm sure Allie's like right there with me. Like we have a bird nest in our carport. So every time I go to my truck, I like speak to her, like, don't get scared. Like, hi mama, I'm just going to get in my car now. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And everybody just looks at me like, just get in your car. And I'm like, no, I can't. I have to talk to this bird for a second.
Yeah. It feels rude. Not
it's feeling everything.
Yeah, I got to talk to this bird for a second.
I was on a walk with my friend a while ago, and we were just walking through the park, and she's got her baby in a stroller, and I'm talking, nonstop, but somebody's walking past, walking their dog. And instead of looking, which I do like look at and smile at all people when I see them, but in this moment, the dog, I guess, took precedent. So I looked down and like mid talking did a little, hey, like you would at a buddy. And she was like, dude, you just waved at that dog, like gave it the acknowledging head nod. Like you two both were like, a good day. But how can you not?
As
Or
you're
even
not.
like in the car, I like wave at the cows, like, hello, hi. Hey,
My
bud.
son does that. He waves to all the dogs at the park.
Yes.
And he's 9. He's not like 3.
No, I do it all the time.
Uh,
I want all of the animals. Like my husband had to tell me like 45 times when we were camping, because they told us when we checked into the camping that there had been some bear sightings, and he must have told me like 45 times, like, if there's a bear, you do not go up and talk to it. Like, I want to make sure that we have this set in place. Like, this is the plan if a bear comes to our campsite. And I'm like, maybe I'll just leave some food out, see what happens.
you can at least make eye contact from afar. That's my ticket for.
So there are people who call themselves animal empaths, I believe.
They exist, and there's also animal psychics, animal mediums. Well, I think any medium can connect to an animal that's passed, but animal psychics will be able to are able to connect with your animals and kind of tell you what they're thinking. And I know a lot of people probably think that that's crap, but I don't think it is.
I don't see why. It's hard for me to imagine that anything's truly out of bounds. It's hard for me to say, like, yes, I believe this is possible, and then in the next breath be like, but that's fucking ludicrous and absolutely not. You know what I mean? Like, where does that line come in? So I feel like, sure, Tina probably could talk to my little dude Arlo right here and tell me exactly what is going through his mind. I mean, who am I to say that's a hard no? Just like, who am I to say that Sasquatch isn't lurking around? I mean, if we want to take this podcast to some weird areas, buckle the fuck up. We're squatching.
I love it.
So
Okay, so go ahead, Stephanie.
I was just going to say, like, back to that question, like empath versus intuitive. Like, I don't know if this is right, but I've always just thought like intuition is kind of like that feeling that you get, right? That feeling that I get. And then empathy is when you get that feeling, and you can get that feeling from someone else's feelings, right? You can like use that to connect with other people's feelings, which is, I think, similar. I think we're all kind of saying the same thing, but
Yeah. And I think also empathy has so much more that comes, being an empath has so much more that comes with it, because you also, not only are you feeling everything, but you have this like immense need to heal and fix and correct. And you want to almost just save everybody. Like, if you could just hug everyone, you would, but that's weird, right? And it's almost like not being in control for a very long time, until you learn and understand that you're an empath. You will feel super out of control of your own emotions. You will feel, it will be almost random. You'll be in a crowd of people and you'll feel like you can't breathe, and you don't understand why all of a sudden you're terrified. You think you're terrified, but really it's just an onslaught of emotion. Like, if you go into a place that's really hectic and busy, all of a sudden you're just exhausted and you just can't. It's almost like you have no control over yourself. It's almost like other people hijack your emotions. Like, they just crawl into your brain and drive away with yourself.
or you've done so much to shut all that down that you don't really feel much of anything. I mean, I feel like that was my young, childhood and young adulthood, because when that stuff isn't really understood, then you think, okay, something's not right about this, and you just kind of shut it down internally. And then someday it comes popping out.
I think there's a dangerous line within, I guess, identifying as an empath. Like, I feel like there's a dangerous line to toe. Like, sometimes I think identifying as an empath almost gives you're giving yourself permission. This is as like, I would consider myself a codependent in recovery. That was like a big battle that I've had throughout my life, was dealing with my codependency, which also can very easily go hand in hand with what you're talking about with being an empath. And it's like, I'm able to easily put myself in somebody else's shoes and feel their feelings. And therefore it's like, oh God, that sucks, and I want to help you with it. And I've encountered, and I think I even myself experienced it in the past, of by way of identifying as an empath or knowing people that identify as empaths. And it's almost like handing yourself this big ass permission slip that means my life is thoroughly dead. Like I've surrendered my own life and my own being to rescue everybody else, even at the severe detriment to myself. Like fully avoid, like ditching the whole, if the plane goes down, put on your own gas mask or oxygen mask and then put on the person next to you. And when I'm witnessing, or even when I was deep in the codependent or like, well, I'm an empath, so this is what I do thing, it equates to like, F my own oxygen mask. I mean, why would I say F there? Not the full word, who knows? But screw my oxygen mask. Everybody else's goes first because I identify as this and therefore I don't have a choice. So it's just something that I've witnessed a lot and that I have had to, in my own experience with being like super codependent prone, that I have to recognize like, sure, I can have that perspective and it's easy for me to feel where others are. And it's really easy for me to be compassionate and empathize my ass off with where somebody is. But I, in the end, need to do my own shit first and not like abandon my own shit for everybody else's, which seems more comfortable a lot of times to just be like, skirt, I got you and screw me, basically.
Well, it is more comfortable because you can feel your stuff and their stuff. So like, if I don't want the burden of feeling your stuff, then, I just fix it and then I don't have to feel your stuff. Then I can just feel like shit over here by myself. But what I think you're describing is the difference between an unaware empath and an empowered empath. Right? Like an unaware empath doesn't prioritize themselves, doesn't have boundaries, is exhausted and is dragging that Santa sack I talked about, whichever episode that was, around behind them, being like, here, give me your stuff. You have a problem. I have a place for it. I will hold your problem for you. Let me have it.
Yeah.
And I think an empowered empath recognizes the major downside to that behavior. And even beyond that, I mean, one of the topics that I feel like we always come back to is like, is the point of life to learn to save yourself, right? Like, is the whole point that this life is for you, these lessons are for you, you have to do the things that are going to help your soul expand and move and grow. And that is like the antithesis of what does it, right? Like, I know that whole thing that people say, like, you can't pour from an empty cup. And I don't remember who said it, Danielle. I don't know if you were part of this or not.
I remember you telling me about it, but I don't remember who said it. It was a male though.
Okay, so I remember, maybe I just read, and I read all the time and then I forget what I read and who said it and where. And
it was in a clubhouse room. I remember that.
Was it? Okay,
yeah.
So the idea was, you can continue to pour from an empty cup, but then you are pouring out your soul. And, as someone who definitely did that, I remember kind of waking up being like, I am a shadow of myself. I don't even know who I am anymore. I don't know what I like or want or care about or what love feels like. I don't know any of it anymore. So I don't know. I think that's an important distinction. And then I would also say, and I'm going to take it in a different direction, unless somebody has something they want to say to that.
Go for it.
Lots of people will talk about, like, you're not an empath, you're just a traumatized child, And so I'm curious to know, like, what's your perspective on that? People ask, well, what makes you an empath, right? And that's like, are you born that way? Do you become that way? Is it a little bit of both? I don't know.
I think it could be a lot. I mean, I think I have a hard time, I guess, with making a massive generalization about it, but I can see how, I think just as codependence can be a coping, or is essentially a coping mechanism, it's a learned behavior for your own, your own safety in whatever form of fashion it may be. But I can also see how if we all inherently have all of these abilities, that maybe my opening and awareness of that ability is enhanced by trauma or coping as a child or at any point in my life. I can 100% see how, like, because I mean, even know just with my codependence, I mean, I think I naturally had an easy ability of like reading people and which equated to a really easy ability to make everybody else comfortable. And then, you know, spirals into, who am I? What do I like to eat? I don't know, but I know what you like to eat, you know, and all of that shit. So I think I can absolutely see that line being drawn between, like, yeah, sure, I'm an empath, but that's just another word for bitch has drama.
I don't know. I've never associated those two, and I've never heard anyone say that or
I've
ask.
just recently seen a ton of memes about it, or maybe
Oh,
it's like
I've
a
seen
TikTok thing.
yeah, a lot. But they're in like empath groups and stuff like that.
Yeah, and you know what? I was going to say that a minute ago, like what you said, Cheryl, about empowered empath versus unaware. I think it's not just unaware and empowered. I think there's also an aware empath who's still in kind of the victim mode with it, you know. Oh my gosh, I have to protect my energy because everyone's attacking me because I'm such an empath. And I that kind of hurts me because, you know, I don't think you're not realizing that you can be an empath and be very powerful. You don't have to be afraid of everyone's energy. You know, you fucking put your own energy out there. You know, you're powerful just because you're an empath. I mean, in fact, you're probably more powerful being an empath than someone who's completely, you know, unaware of all of these energies that are going on around us.
I think two things I wanted to add really quick. One, just kind of with what you just said is really true. There is this really, it's kind of like this huge misconception that being an empath means that your job is to be for everyone else. And that does kind of start, I think, I do think that some empaths are natural born, like the ability is born within them. It's part of their journey and their soul's journey. And most of those people that are born that way have some other abilities that come with that kind of make it this massive thing. And then I think a lot of empaths are triggered by something. If you were to do a survey of people who identify as empaths or do work as empaths, almost always they would have one or two narcissistic parents. They would have come from a very codependent home. From a very young age, they had to kind of carry the emotions of the house because nobody else seemed to be able to. And it then makes you think that, oh, okay, my job is to carry everyone else, is to worry about everyone else. But the reason that we become empaths or that we're born empaths is not for everyone else. It is the biggest tool for us to fulfill our purpose here. It helps us to identify and learn and be able to see people for who they are and not just what they're doing. And it also allows us to live a life of full more love, because when you're lacking that, then you're not really able to fulfill your purpose or your destiny. So I think one of the biggest things about being an empath is that, one, yeah, you do have the power to control it. While it is hard to recognize that, but I think the minute you stop thinking that I'm an empath, so I have to give to everyone else, and you realize, like, I'm an empath, I'm supposed to feel this for me. Like, what am I learning from all of these things? Like, what feels good for me? What doesn't feel good for me? What can I fix, and what is it not my job to fix? And setting up those boundaries and creating those, and it took me longer than I'd like to have learned that. But I think one of the biggest things is just learning that being an empath, while it's an amazing tool that we can use with other people, it's not a tool that's meant just for other people. It's really honestly just meant for us. And our ability to cope and work through all the shit that will get thrown at us. But yeah.
For us first, but isn't like really ultimately our purpose is to serve other people, but not when it means at the detriment of ourselves, you know. But yes, you know, we get ourselves strengthened up and we get ourselves straight, and then we turn it outwards, and it's not a victimizing thing. It's not taking away from ourselves, but it's just giving.
Right.
Well, sometimes the way in which you do that, I think, is by being the example. So, like, rather than giving to someone else, you give to yourself, and through that example, you're serving them because they grow and emulate that, right?
And sometimes the strongest part of being an empath is learning to walk away or let go or have healthy boundaries. And a lot of the times, one of the things that would probably have to help people with the most is like reminding them that they're kind of in their own way, right? And the same goes for us. We get in our own way constantly. And so sometimes it means like, is this, maybe you're not going to like this when I have to put up this boundary and I have to say like, I'm sorry, I can't keep doing this. I can't give you what you're asking me to give you. And sometimes that's whether it's immediate or it's just a little seed that you plant. Maybe later that person turns around and is like, oh, okay, I don't have to do this anymore, right? I can say no to this and do it without waiting for that explosion, right? Where usually when things happen, it's built up and built up to where it's this massive explosion where friendships are ended or relationships are ended. And there's like kind of no fixing it at that point. And we can blame them in their, empath sucking ways, or we can also blame ourselves, like, who the hell let them suck all this from me? Like, they didn't just hold me down and then do it. Like, I was freely giving what I didn't need to give. And so the responsibility ends up, it's kind of, there is no victim seat when you're an empath. Like, you're in control of this. It's up to you when you decide to take the reins and run with it.
Yeah.
If you're throwing up walls, that's a big sign, right? That you did not have proper boundaries in place. And so if you look back at your life at where have I thrown up a wall and been like, I'm out, I'm done, I'm not doing this anymore, that review that section. There were some boundaries that were missing in there. Apply in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I generally don't know that there's a boundary that got totally trampled on or that should have been there until I'm basically shitting the bed and being like, oh my God, then it is the biggest wall. And then a real reflection period of like, how how many, little tiny things should I have put up, or just little tiny, like raising my hands and be like, ooh, I'm aware now that this line has been crossed, or this, line wasn't there, but that I should have had a line there. And in the past, it would be like, oh, this doesn't feel good, but I would just keep going until the end. I've got a whole, like, steel, massive, huge wall, ghost city, like change my name, move to another country. I can't live this life anymore type wall goes up because there's just no availability or tolerance anymore.
Yeah, I think that's usually what ends up happening, right? Whether it's, well, mostly it's relationships or even jobs. We'll give and give and give and give until all of a sudden and then there's this massive explosion and we have this laundry list, like a scroll, like of reasons why we're right. And it's like, that's probably true. You probably have reasons to be, but like, what are you doing creating this massive long list? Like, shouldn't you just have stopped at reason number one? Like, why the hell are you reading reason number 1,564 right now? Like, what's happening here?
So bad. This is such a dumb example, but I'm going to share it because it's exactly what you're talking about. So it's super dumb. So there's a restaurant down the street that my friends and I go to all the time. And so, COVID, no one could go out to eat. So like we hadn't been forever. So finally now you're allowed to eat outside, and you can eat inside now too. But so my girlfriend and I are there the other day, and our server gave us just this like really terrible service. And like at first it just felt like she just was just not a great server and just didn't really care about her job. And then she asked us to check out because she was leaving, and we're like, we're not done, So we talked to the manager, and like she apologized and got it all sorted out. And then my girlfriend just texted me that she was there the other day, and with a group of moms for their like baseball team, and they were ordering food, having drinks, like all the stuff, large tab built up, and they asked them to leave. They said, we have a reservation, so like we need this table, we need you to leave. And I was like, okay, that's a pattern, like the first time was an anomaly, the second time was a pattern. So like from this boundary perspective, like if we continue to go there and expect the treatment we used to get there, like we're not going to get it. So like we are putting ourselves in a position where we're going to feel mistreated in the end. And this is by a restaurant, right? Like this is in a personal relationship with like your sister or your mom or your boyfriend or your husband or whatever. But I feel the exact same thing. Like I guarantee you, if we keep going there, we're going to have one more incident where I am going to blow up the internet because I'm so mad at this restaurant, and then I'm never going to be willing to go there again. Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing though, if you like, so this is how that restaurant functions now, and you guys could continue to go back there and feel mistreated when really that's just, you know, they're not putting out any mixed signals really. It's like, no, this is, you know, how we're functioning. Like we've got a reservation, shit's got to move, blah, 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 which is all fine, but that's not what you're used to. And that's also not where you want to go dine. Like that's not what you guys are into. And so you can keep showing up and being like, but this is how I want to be served. And they're like, but this is our business and how we do it. So
this relationship no longer works, right?
yes.
That's like a horrible empath thing, right? Where, and it never ceases to amaze me sometimes. Like the people, I'll just speak personally. I've had so many people in my life who have literally showed me and told me exactly who they are. I just didn't believe them. I was like, well, if I just love you enough, like if I just keep doing this over and over again, because I know if somebody did this for me, this is how I would act. So so it's like for you, Cheryl, or something, if we just keep showing up and spending a lot of money and ordering a lot of drinks,
It'd be
and
nice
they're gonna be like, hey, we love them. And they're gonna be like, yeah, no, we don't care. I told you I didn't care. The first 55 times. Yes.
Guys, I literally dated a guy for a very long time. It was before me and my beautiful dude Oz got together, but he 100% was fully transparent on a lot of things for the duration of our relationship. And I was always like, oh, I don't know though. I'm pretty sure I'm the exception. And for the 5 years, at least once a year, he would literally say the words to me, I don't think I can love you. And I'd be like, hold on. Yes, you can. I mean, what the fuck? But I was just hell bent like, oh no. He's such a kidder. He's just so cute. He thinks he can't love me, but I promise I will show you that you can love me.
I'm gonna love you so much. No one else will love you.
Yeah. It's like, I'm just not trying hard enough. Just hold on. Just give me a couple more months and I promise I can prove to you that you can love me. I mean, what the fucking stupid ass shit was that? But it was in the moment and in that time, the most natural and doy response that I could have. It was like, he thinks he can't love me. Joke's on him.
Watch this.
Watch this. I'm gonna ruin myself just to prove to you that yes, you can. Ludicrous
now.
words. Yeah.
Plates on the ground burning to death.
Oy. Dumb. But
It's just it's a really, and whether it's a relationship or it's like a parent or it's a job, like I think we're all guilty of doing that at some point or another, multiple times if you're me.
Yeah.
Okay, the instructional designer in me is bothered that we did not go through all the Claires.
Okay, let's go through the course.
Let's go back. We can do this.
I'm going to time out really quick. You guys keep going, but I am going to hop up. I'm going to pee all of the pants that I own. I've been hydrating like an idiot. And so I'll pee really quick.
Why don't we just pause and then we'll pee and then you can just cut all of this out.
I'm leaving it. I'm going to pee though.
So we're going to describe the Claires.
Okay, yeah, it's been bothering me that we haven't continued to educate about what all the Claires are. Just in case someone doesn't know, someone might not
I don't think I know all the Claires. I mean, I didn't even know they were the Claires, that they have their own little Destiny's Child band going.
Yeah.
So let's hear it.
Okay, there's claircognizant. I have that one big time. That's when you just know stuff about people. I have a funny story about that. I think I have to get permission to share it, so I won't share it now. Right? So we talked about clairsentience. That's clear feeling.
Yes.
Claircognizance. That's clear knowing. Clairvoyance. That's clear seeing.
Uh-huh.
What's the smelly one?
Claire Sniff.
It's Claire aliens. Claire aliens is smelling.
They're aliens.
Aliens. It's ALIENCE.
Okay.
And then clairaudience is hearing.
Okay, when people wake up from dreams and they smell stuff, is that the smelling one? The clairalience?
Yes.
Well, Danielle, you got the smelly one, right?
Sometimes.
You just took a shower.
People
Sometimes.
usually say that about me.
Danielle did a reading for me, and all she could talk about the whole time, not all she could talk about, but you kept talking about the smell of the scar smoke. Yeah, that was pretty cool. It was really
Sometimes when spirit comes to me, and especially in mediumship readings, they will give me different things. Sometimes I'll smell things. I'll see a picture of something. They'll try to like describe themselves to me in some way. You know, and so I'll either I'll see like a weird pattern or color, or I'll smell something. But yes, so when you wake up from a dream and you're smelling something, then that is, for me, and my belief is that that is a communication to you of some sort, and they're using smell to trigger that for you. So I think you wake up and you're.
Has anybody ever come to you in a reading and it's like, holy shit, it reeks of patchouli, or like, who farted, or is it ever like, did your uncle smell terrible, or anything like that?
I haven't had one where they smell terrible, thank God. But like, funny enough, I was doing a reading and I was connecting with someone's brother, and I was like, okay, so this happened twice, and I'll try to make it really short. So the one time I was like, did they smoke? And they're like, yes. And I was like, that's not quite what I'm like, okay, but like, did they smoke weed a lot? I'm not really weird saying it, because like all I could smell. And they're like, yes. It was almost like embarrassing, right, to them, because that was not something that they would normally do. But to me, I just thought it was awesome. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
cool. And then that happens this one happened when I was kind of still new in my readings, so I wasn't as confident. And I told them that the person that came through had a very strong smell to them. And I asked if they had like an injury or something, because they had like a line in their hair, like a line in their hair, like almost like a scar or something. And at first they had no idea what I was talking about. So I just had to keep going. And I was like, okay, but I was like, I have to go back to like the really strong smell. Like, did they like carry weed with them a lot? And it turned out that he actually disappeared in Mexico. So put that together with this really strong smell, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to give out too much, but needless to say, it wasn't like he smoked it. Like, it was just everywhere. So all I smelled was like fresh, unsmoked marijuana. And I had to just be more direct about it. And then I went back, and I was, because he kept, and he always had what I guess they call it a hard part. This was when, now I have it in my memory, now I know, but he always had like that cut in his hair where and so that's what I was seeing. And so that's how those two things came together. But so twice now I've had some major
super stony spirits.
marijuana connoisseur.
So do you consider that then, Danielle, like your Claire alien?
Yeah, like that would be smelling, and then like when I saw the part of his hair, then that would have been clairvoyance, because I was clearly seeing this scalp through hair, like line. So it's both of those kind of at work.
Mm-hmm.
What about you guys?
5 clairs?
I think there's 5.
Yeah, there's seeing, hearing, knowing, feeling, smelling.
What about tasting? Don't some
what's
people have
that?
tasting?
I don't know if there's tasting.
Oh, I'm sure.
I don't know that one. Maybe that would go along with, I don't know. Now I'm gonna Google it.
Google
I'm Googling it right now.
Because
Yeah.
that's like with us.
Oh yeah, okay. It's clairgustance. It's clear tasting.
That would make sense. Yeah.
That's clear tasting. Yeah. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's technically 6. Which makes sense, because it kind of goes along with all of our senses, right?
Each sense plus, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Plus the knowing. Yeah.
Huh.
What were you gonna say, Cheryl? Did you say, what about you guys?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Do you resonate with any of those?
Do you use
Yeah.
any of them?
Clairsentience. for sure. I mean, when I talk about my intuition being like literal feelings in different parts of my body, I mean, like mostly like, kind of
The
in
trunk.
these like second through fifth chakra mostly. It, yeah, to me that's clairsentience, I think.
Is that's the feeling? Does that equate to the knowing? Like just knowing shit?
That's just
Oh.
feeling it. That's like being an empath. That's like feeling things. Like
So I guess I have both because sometimes there's a knowing. Yeah. I mean, yeah, for sure. There's often a knowing, but I think it seems like they go together. Often, the feelings and the knowing kind of go together. And if you pay attention to the feeling, the knowing comes or something, I think. I don't know. I haven't really tried to sort that out exactly. I kind of thought they were the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think once we recognize it and we listen to it, it is really easy to all of a sudden just know what it's telling us. So it does kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah.
I think the clear knowing is, for me, the way I explain it is almost if somebody like takes something and just literally drops it into your brain. Like all of a sudden it's like, you've got mail, bing, there it is. And you just all of a sudden know something.
Yeah.
And seeing is when you actually see like pictures or.
Yeah, so that's actually really good. The difference is that the clairsentience in my body is more of a yes or no. And then the knowing is more of a more complete thought or
That
knowledge.
kind of puts them all together.
Yeah.
I have a funny example. I won't tell who this is, and so that way I don't feel like I'm overstepping boundaries. But I was at a friend's house for a barbecue a few years ago, and her husband is a dentist, and so we're all hanging out, before we start cooking the food, and I just looked at him and I go, "You chew tobacco?" And to Danielle's point, it just gets like, you just know all of a sudden, just like, I don't know, like you looked at the wall and you're like, oh, the wall is like cream, like you just, I don't know how you just know. And my friend's eyes were like popping out of her face. She's like, how did you know that? I'm like, I don't know. Sometimes I know stuff about people.
What if you had that download and it was a secret and then it was like, holy shit.
It totally was a secret because he's a dentist. And
Yeah.
she was like,
That's like a no.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm really bad at outing people's pregnancies, and I don't mean to. I just can't help myself. And I've done that. It just happened just again recently, like about, I don't know, 2 months ago. We met up with all of our family, and we were like miniature golfing. And all of a sudden, I looked at my niece, and I was like, "Are you trying to have a baby?" And she's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Well, like, you're gonna have a baby,
You are.
like right now." And she's like. And then she just texted me like 3 days ago and was like, I just want to let you know that your prediction's right. I'm 6 weeks pregnant.
Oh.
And I was like, congratulations. Surprise. I've done that a lot.
Let's talk about the death thing. Can we talk about that? I feel like we talked about this in Clubhouse a million years ago.
Death?
But like I feel like I always know when someone is terminally ill or not terminally ill, when someone is significantly sick. I will know if they're going to die soon or not. What's that?
That's probably just another feeling, right? Or even clear knowing. It's just,
Yeah, I just know.
Yeah, I think it kind of lines up with your line of work too, right? You've been around long enough to really develop that sense of.
Yeah, but I don't work with patients. You know what I mean? This is like friends or friends' parents or kids or whatever.
But I was thinking, actually, I wasn't even thinking about the hospice thing. I was thinking about your work as a functional medicine coach, that your health related work.
Yeah.
You have a really strong connection with you have a really strong connection with your own body and what it needs, and you know when you're not doing it right. And so I think that same connection filters outwards, right? It's not just something that we keep just for us. So some people are really good at doing stuff like that. I'm not as good. Like my husband's really weird about certain things. Like he's pretty psychic in his own way, but he always knows how much a baby's gonna weigh when it's born, which is and what day it's going to be born, which
Guys,
I
that's
win the
horrible.
pool every single time when I ask him.
You're
And
cute.
then he will be able to tell you what age someone will be when they die. And he usually keeps it to himself because that's a heavy
Yeah.
burden.
I don't-
But and the very few times he's been right, it's been freaky. Well, not that he's been right, but that he's told me, I guess I should say, that he says it out loud. Because he will not say it, no matter how much I beg him, like, well, what's my number? He's like, I'm not fucking telling you.
No, oh gosh.
Oh, what a burden for him to bear to know that,
Yeah.
you know?
But it's weird. He's very matter of fact about it. It just is what it is. But since he's so calm about it, I figure I'm gonna be here for quite some time.
Yeah.
If not, I can be
If he all of a sudden starts giving you a
Yeah.
lot of presents and
He's
like,
not like rushing me to do all my bucket lists, so I guess we're good for now. Like when he starts booking trips to like Ireland and Jamaica, I'm gonna freak out.
Big anniversary present shows up. You're like, you're trying to tell me something?
That's
That's like the
okay.
other day, I was going on a trip and Danielle goes, okay, be careful. And I go, what do you mean be
Should
careful?
I?
Just be
I
careful.
freaked out. I was like, I just meant just be careful. I don't know.
You know, psychic friends do not tell their friends to be careful when they're doing things. Like,
I would have been much more specific
Yeah.
than that. I just always say be safe or be careful when people go anywhere. But yeah, I realize now, like when you said it, I was like, oh,
thanks a
I
lot.
promise you're fine.
Have you ever had anything like that, Danielle, where it's like, oh shit, don't play with jellyfish? I mean, obviously don't play with jellyfish, but have you ever had any sort of those feelings of when somebody you know or love is about to do something where you're like, whatever you do, don't cross the street?
don't get on that plane.
Yeah.
There's been a few times, and a lot of it was before I even knew
Understood
what-
your stuff.
Yeah, there's been some times where I just, oh man, I remember this one time I was like 15 and my mom was leaving for work and I just was freaking out. Like I was way too old to be freaking out this way. Like I was running out to her car. I was like hyperventilating. I would not let her leave. And I still to this day don't know exactly why I was like that, but she didn't go to work that day and I'm just convinced that she wasn't supposed to. And it was really, really, really weird. But, and even with my mom, I knew that she wasn't gonna make it out of the situation she was in. And most people would have thought that she would have been fine. But I just knew from the get-go. I told my husband when I was packing my bag, because I lived about 2 hours away from her, and I was packing a bag and me and the kids were going, and I said, she's not gonna make it. And he's like, you have to be positive. She had the flu and pneumonia. That's what it was. And they're like, she'll be fine. She just has some other, she has diabetes and all these other things. So, they just need to take care of her. We've been in this before. We've been in this situation before where she's gotten sick and she had like an infection or something and she's always been fine. And I just knew. And I always felt really bad for like the time frame that we were dealing with it, that I always thought like, this isn't, every time the nurses would come in and say something was getting better, I was like,
Yeah.
okay,
But it's not.
it's not.
Yeah.
I just always knew. And I for a really long time, I was guilty about that. Like almost like if I like brought that on her or something by thinking it, I was worried about that for a really long time. But now I just realized that like I just knew, and I just knew.
How old were you when that happened?
She passed away 3 years ago.
Oh,
So 34, 35. Yeah.
I just asked that because when you said you felt like you brought it on yourself, that sound like, something that might happen when you're, just at the very, like when you aren't really aware of your abilities. But I guess that just speaks to like how strong that like guilt can be. You know what I mean? Just how easy it is to like blame ourselves in any way that we possibly can.
Yeah, I think especially when we lose someone we love, like no one's immune from that. You know what I mean? Like not even me. I even now, like even having the connection that I have with her and the different ways that she shows up for me, I still miss her every single day, like devastatingly so. And so I tell people that, like, be sad. It's okay to miss them. Like they're fine. We're not okay. That's okay. Like no one's immune from these guilty feelings or these missteps. And it doesn't matter what you do with your life or how good you get at things or how much you're trying to be better. Like we always have these missteps and we all come from places that were not so great, I guess you could say.
I think she comes to visit me all the time. I
My
don't
mom?
know if there, yeah, I don't know if there's some other hummingbird or if it's your mom, but there's this little hummingbird. I mean, I didn't have any food in the feeder for a while,
Oof.
and it was just hanging out right in front of the slider, like for a long time. And I'm like, hi, see you. Thanks. Thanks for visiting. How are you? Maybe
She
it's not her,
always
maybe it's
always
someone else,
knows.
but
I love to think that it's her. My mom was very much one of those moms that like everyone was her kid, right? When we had our friends, all of a sudden they were her kid too. And anyone that was good to us, she was good to them. So
Mhm.
makes
Mhm.
me think of her. It was nice.
makes me think of her. Even if it's not her, I'm like, hi Donna, how are you? Okay, I have a question. We talk a lot about discernment usually. And so I know we've talked about this, and I don't know if we've ever really gotten it to a spot where like we super well, maybe we talked about this last time actually. Did we talk about the difference between intuition and fear last time? Maybe we kind of did. No?
I don't think so.
I don't think
I think we
so.
talked about fear, but I don't think we talked about intuition with it.
I was kind of thinking, I guess what we talked about was like, you know, when cycles happen and things repeat and like you keep, you know, the same thing keeps coming up again and again. Is that like a nudging or what is it? But okay, so difference between intuition and fear. I think that's a good spot to dive into for a minute.
Yeah. Well, the way I always tell the difference, or at least try to, is that intuition is calm and it's not emotional. So it's just sort of matter of fact. It can be a strong feeling, but it doesn't have like anxiety or franticness or any kind of a story or anything attached to it. It's just kind of a calm, like force or something. Whereas fear, of course, you know, is lots of anxiety and lots of stories and lots of, you know,
Mhm.
activity. Yeah.
75 endings before it even started, like played out in your head already.
Yeah.
And loops out the ass, just like keeps chewing the same thing.
Yeah.
I think fear makes us ignore our intuition often. And I always say intuition, whether it's coming from our higher self or it's something that the universe or our guides or whoever are giving us these warnings for. It's meant to help us, not hinder us. So it's sometimes it will, like you'll get a bolt of intuition where it feels, I mean, I think we've probably all had those moments where we're just all of a sudden terrified and we know we need to like turn around, not go in, not leave, something like that, right? Where we have like these moments of instantaneous panic. And that's a little different than regular, just run of the mill intuition. But I always say, like, your intuition is here to help you, not hinder you. So if it's telling you to do something that's not loving or kind, or your intuition's never going to tell you that you're supposed to like slash so and so's tires because they're an asshole. Like, that's not your intuition. It's also not going to tell you that you can't leave your house for 6 years because if you do, the world will end. I don't know. Like, there's a huge difference between. Sorry?
I said that's all fear, right?
Yeah, that's all fear based. So I think the best way to know your intuition is when you stop and you just stop and you just listen. And I say that not like somebody's gonna just talk to you, but just listen. Like, it becomes very clear what you're supposed to do. And our fear sometimes, like when our intuition is telling us to do something, especially if it's something new or something that we are not what we think prepared for or planned for, then our first instinct is to be like, no, that's not right. And then we ignore that. And then before you know it, it's been 3 years of bullshit. And that same intuition's back at your door, like, remember me? And
Yeah.
you're probably still like, no, I don't know who you are. I'm going to stick with this for a while. So
Yeah. Oh,
that's where the cycles come in.
my intuition is always, she's persistent. And so she'll come back and tell me the same thing, but it's always with that calmness again, where it's like, even if this is the 100th time that she's told me even that day, and it's the 7 trillionth time because she's been telling me it every day for 3 years. She's never displeased, disappointed, or anything with me. It's just always like, well, don't do this or turn left or whatever it may be. But it's always with a calm, like loving, affectionate thing. And even like if it's don't get in that car with that man, or, a very blatant stop or anything, even when she gives me that, even if it's like stern, it's still really, really calm. It's not the panic. And it may result in me panicking, sure. Like she may give me something calm or give me that feeling of like, don't get in that car. And then I myself start shitting my pants. But she's not. She's coming at me with full-blown calmness.
Yeah.
And she's always giving me coulds, not shoulds. Like she's giving me possibilities. And even if I don't do what she says, she's still okay with it. It's never you should. It's like you could do this, unless it's like don't get in the car, and it's like, well, you don't get in the car. But even then, it's like I still love you if you get in the car and you're watching somebody's basement for 20 years. I'm still right here and I'm with you, but
It's gonna suck for a minute.
I wouldn't.
Skip it.
Yeah. Things are cooler if you don't.
Yeah.
That's what I loved about all those books about like past life regression and the time between lives is like I did not read a single account of someone saying that when they were in their life review it was full of judgment from their guides and their peers or whomever. They're like the harshest judge is yourself, like, or even suicide is one that I reached out to Danielle recently about friends, somebody who had committed suicide, and I was thinking about him thinking, oh man, he's going through his life review right now. His guides are going, this was not part of our plan. And he's going, I know, I'm sorry, like you are the harshest critic. And I just think that's such a lovely idea, even if it's nonsense. I don't think it's nonsense, but even if it was nonsense, it's this lovely idea that like you're going to be enveloped in love, and the harshest critic is you.
If it happened, it was part of the plan, right? I mean, I don't think anything can happen if it's not part of the plan.
I don't know about that one. I think sometimes people hit the eject seat versus learning their lessons, and then they just, okay, here they go again. Like, we'll just do that again. At least from the books I read, and I probably read like 6 of them, the suicides were the ones where people were like, and then I had committed suicide and had to deal with my guides, and like I didn't learn all the lessons I was supposed to. And
yeah,
I have to say, in readings, so just from my own personal experience of doing connections, that's one of the hugest ones is people who commit suicide or people whose life is taken from them, especially in a very tragic way. That a lot of people here will be afraid that they're stuck or in purgatory or they went to hell, especially with suicide, not so much the other one, but the other one, they always be afraid that they're stuck here and their souls like wandering around haunting everyone because they don't know what's happened to them. And so, especially when I deal with suicides, a lot of times loved ones will come through with acknowledgments if they need to. Well, they'll acknowledge something that was off balance here in life. But suicides are really the ones where they will full on just be like, there's almost an apologetic tone to it. There is an immense acknowledgement almost immediately. And so you can tell that they went and they've realized like the ripple effects of what they've done. And it is, I don't think anyone is supposed to commit suicide, as in no one is supposed to murder someone. You murder someone, you're going to wait, like that person will be waiting for you when your time comes, and you will come back with that person and have to make it up to them in some way. You will have to make amends to them in the next lifetime, on top of whatever other lessons you're going to have to learn. We were never supposed to take lives, whether it was our own or someone else's. That was never That's never part of the plan. Unfortunately, it just happens. And it doesn't mean that then that it's not something to learn from, because there is a ripple effect to that too. There's lessons learned here to the people who are left behind that had to deal with it. And the souls learn a lesson, whether it's trusting their intuition or having healthy boundaries or being more aware of themselves, whatever that lesson may be that came from it. But you know, while they are 100% at peace, they find their peace very quickly. They understand very quickly. They do have to come back and finish what they started. And not only that, they're tagging along a new thing. There's like no free rides. So it's not like, well, I'm going to finish this and then it's like, no, you're going to finish that. And it's like summer school, right? Like, no, you're still going on to high school, but you're going to go to summer school before you
But
do.
yeah, but I mean, don't we all have to finish what we started, whether or not we end it that way? I mean, I think we're all on a very long journey, I think.
If we don't learn the lessons we're supposed to learn here, and maybe we don't learn them to their entirety, but like, if we're just not even trying to learn them, we're not even making the steps to try to understand and expand our minds and grow like every single day. Yeah, we're just going to go back and we're going to be like, oh yeah, I remember now. That's what I was supposed to be doing there. And then it's like, okay, well, head on back and finish that and also start this one. And that's when, you know, sometimes it's really easy to get in the victim seat if you're having like a really hard life, if things never seem to go right for you. And it's like, you got to switch your perspective, because there's something huge here trying to show you. And not that I don't have any empathy for people who have had really struggling lives or have had a lot of horrible things happen. It's like, all right, well, let's acknowledge that this sucks, but let's figure out now why is it happening? What are we learning here? That's not so easy all the time.
Yeah.
But there is no easy way. There's no easy way to do this, suicide included. There is just no easy way.
Right.
And sometimes, I don't know. I mean, there's sometimes where suicides are impacted by, it's, you know, this is like a whole other thing, but medicines and different man-made things that can really just fry our brains. And before you know it, we're stuck in this cycle, and then our life is over. And it wasn't even something we consciously, while we considered a suicide, it wasn't like we were consciously choosing to do that. It was
like an overdose or something, you mean?
Yeah. Yeah, or like, you know, sometimes there's certain medications that will really, you know, you've seen the medications, right? The warnings, like if you have suicide thoughts, like here's this medicine for depression, but if you have suicidal thoughts while you're on it.
Yeah.
So I think there's some times where things happen outside of our control, and then whatever part of plan that is kind of a whole new thing. But yeah, no one is supposed to leave earlier than they are. But at the same time, to what you were saying, whether it's okay, like whatever they leave, whether it's earlier than they take their lives or something happens to them that's horrible, it's never like that wasn't supposed to happen. Like instantaneously the plan shifts and it all of a sudden will make sense.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of what I was thinking when I said that it's like a GPS that just continually and in the biggest, grandest scheme of things, you know, time doesn't really exist the way we tend to experience it. And so that's, you know, everything that happens, it happened, you know, in that grandest scheme, there's not really any mistakes. But I know that's, you guys know me, every once in a while I get a little too far up in the house.
I feel like we've gone in a million directions today, because there's so much that leads into this. And I said this the other day, like intuition and our empathic abilities and just intuition in general is something that is wound into everything we do, every minute of the day, forever. It literally is a core root of everything.
Yeah. Well, I think this was awesome. Did we have any other questions lined up?
I don't. Do you guys
I think we hit a lot of stuff.
covered in
I'm
that?
sure we'll come back to it again and again a million times.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
What's your intuition tell you about it?
Yeah, I think that'll be laced into basically everything. I mean, even a lot of what we talked about today, there was similar. It all kind of links back to the same stuff, I think. Ultimately, there's stuff that we touched today that reminds me of some of the stuff that we even touched last time with, getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, which is, we talked about it a little bit then of, the lines between like, is this something I'm supposed to be comfortable with? Like, is this part of the growth, or is this like my insides, my intuition being like, drop this shit because it sucks, It's always that balance, that fine line that we're always kind of treading. And it is a lot of, I think, that rerouting and recalculating too, that we can be on it and we're like in line and we are connected. And then, I don't know, we blink and then it's like, oh shit, I got a little off track here. And then it's
My turn.
yeah, rerouting. So yeah, I'm sure that we'll dig into this a plenty times, but I think this was good. I feel complete.
And I think
I'm Allie and I'm complete.
Okie dokie.
Right. Lots
love
of
it.
See you soon.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.